Narcissists aren't aware of the effect that their behavior has on other people. And if we know a narcissist, we feel that, don't we? It's like we can think to ourselves, why can't this person just see where I'm coming from? Why can't they hear me? Why can't they see me? It's almost like we feel invisible around them to a point with our emotions. Maybe you're related to a narcissist like I am, or you work with one, or maybe you're in a relationship with one. This video, no matter your relationship, will help you. Narcissism, put simply, is extreme self-involvement, meaning extreme to the degree, to the point, that it makes a person ignore the needs and emotions of the people that surround them. Narcissism, like many other things, has a spectrum. People who are on the higher end of the spectrum are those who are classified as those with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. But others still have other narcissistic traits. Almost every human has, even to a small degree, but they can fall lower on the spectrum. It's really helpful to understand this to get a grasp on what it is that you're actually dealing with, who and what you're dealing with. So I'm going to be sharing with you 5 things that I wish I knew about narcissism years ago before having to deal with it and suffer through it and feel a lot of pain through it, understanding it a little bit later in life. But first, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon to get notified every time I upload a new video, because I'm dropping more and more juicy content. First up, it's important to understand that people who show signs of narcissism can often be really fun to be with, really charming, really charismatic, and they really reel us in that way. They often don't show any negative traits or behavior up front, especially in their relationships. People who are narcissistic often surround themselves with people who say yes to them and who don't argue with them and who tend to reinforce the ideals that they have about themselves, even if that means that their relationships stay somewhat superficial, even over the many years that they're friends or in a relationship. Here's what I've learned that I wish I knew about loving and managing a relationship with a narcissist in my life. First is important. It's really to take nothing personally. Sometimes when you're with a narcissist, insults will come your way from them. For all of a narcissist's bravado, they're very, very sensitive. That's why they point the finger at everyone else and everyone else being wrong, because they could never for a second tolerate the finger being pointed at them. That's why they have to be right. It's why other people always have to be wrong. Other people have to be misinformed. Other people don't know the truth. Because a narcissist simply can never be weak, they can never be wrong. And so if you're surrounded by one or more than one, you'll be targeted as someone who's wrong, someone who isn't in the know, someone who doesn't know as much or as well as they do. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that that's the truth. It just means that in that relationship, the dynamic is never going to be one where they're in the wrong and you're in the right. So knowing this brought me a whole lot of peace, because I didn't have to argue my case. I just knew what I was dealing with, and I can privately just manage my own thoughts, opinions, ideals, and that's that. The second thing I wish I knew was that instead of trying to convince or convey my point of view or really, be very honest and vulnerable and raw and share how it is that I'm feeling, if there is a point of contention that simply won't change the subject instead. Just change the subject. And if there's a topic that you and your narcissistic friend or relative don't agree upon, you just have to change the subject. One thing that I was taught to say, instead of sticking with the problem and diving deeper into the problem and just continually butting heads and getting exhausted and getting nowhere, is approaching the conversation like this. Hey, I know you care about this subject, but I want us to have a fun weekend together, or a fun lunch or a fun evening. Can we talk about something else for a bit? Distraction is your friend. In fact, a friend of mine has a brother, and he is on the narcissistic spectrum, pretty high up, we'd say, and it always has to be about him. his needs, the right way to spend a vacation, the right way to spend time with family, the right way to spend money. And often he'll come up with his very, very firm opinions on what's right and wrong and who's living life right and wrong. And her technique with him is to constantly just listen, nod, and change the subject. And that way she saves herself a lot of energy, a lot of emotional energy, and they actually manage to have quite pleasant experiences together because they're not harping on about things that are simply irreconcilable. This is an important point too. You can love them. As I got to understand narcissism more deeply, I had a lot of empathy through understanding that narcissists are unable to have true, deep, real, intimate connections with other people, because that involves letting another person seeing your flaws. Being seen can be so terrifying when you just don't feel completely worthy. In this respect, any narcissist in our life can have our empathy because they have to rely totally on themselves. And this really ignites compassion within me, because if somebody exists out there who can never really sincerely apologize, never take responsibility from being wrong or hurting others, who can never really have an open-hearted, fully you can see me, vulnerable conversation and relationship, that's a very lonely place to be. You'll often find that with narcissists, they don't have real open relationships, really close, where they are so themselves, they're seen, they can be emotional, they can show all sides of themselves. That's simply not a possibility. And in that loneliness, there's suffering, even though you will never see or hear about it. Most importantly, you have to understand that you cannot change them. Accept this. There is such a peace and surrender to the acceptance of this. I find that it really helps my own self-esteem, my own calmness, my own composure when I'm like, okay, this person is this person. This is who and how they are, and this is permanent. It's sticking around. It's not going anywhere. All I can manage is myself. I think that, so much of our suffering in life is thinking that we can change, adapt, convey, convince others, persuade them to be different. And this is simply not the case with the narcissist in your life. So acceptance, loving them for who and what they are, accepting what you will get from them in terms of the level of intimacy in the relationship, it will be what it will be, and that won't change in the future. So accepting this is really key to your peace. And I find that the more accepting and loving I am, the better my relationship is. Okay, finally, know this. Finally, please understand this. This really helped me. Someone who is a narcissist will put their needs first, no matter what. You have to do the same thing. You don't have to contort yourself into a million different directions and positions just to fit them, just to make that person comfortable. This is where having your own firm boundaries will come in, because no one's going to step in and save you and save your energy and save your time and save you and your needs. It has to be you. And if you want to know more about this topic, I was so blessed to speak with the world expert on narcissism, and I absolutely love her book and our interview. So if you haven't seen it already, be sure to watch my interview with Wendy Bahari, the leading expert on narcissism, who's taught me so much. Our interview is incredible, and in it, Wendy shares the difference between empathy and compassion, what narcissism really is, because it is complex and it's not what most people think, and why it's even okay to lie to a narcissist at times, and so many more eye-opening things. I hope you check out her book and enjoy our interview right here.